President Joe Biden makes a move to forgive thousands of dollars in student loans for debt for millions of Americans. Iowa struggles to pass a law to require hands-free driving when it comes to cell phones. And Illinois no longer has to get the okay from the courts when it comes to hiring state employees. We'll cover all that ground this morning with Iowa Republican Party Chair Jeff Kaufman and Democratic political consultant Porter McNeil. Always great to see you both. Let's get right to it. Illinois got a pretty heavy weight lifted off its back earlier this month. It didn't get a lot of attention. The state had been under a consent decree for half a century that required the courts to approve people being hired for jobs with the state of Illinois. That decree put in place in 1972 as a response to the corrupt practice of hiring people in exchange for their loyalty, a form of bribery, if you will, in a lot of cases. Now, this system of patronage has a long and dark history in Illinois under governors from both the Democratic and Republican parties. A federal appeals court, though, found the state has made it a progress and doesn't need this oversight anymore. It will likely still be hard for Illinois to shed this image. Isn't it helpful to have this backstop? And how worried should people be that Illinois falls back into its old habits without it, Porter?
Well, I think this has been an opportunity for Governor Pritzker, who inherited this bipartisan hiring problem. And he's really helped turn the page in Illinois, reforming the state's hiring so that they reflect the Illinois and the U.S. Constitution, and installing more reforms to demonstrate that Illinois has indeed turned the page. I think it's an opportunity to show that Illinois is moving ahead after 50 years under that court decree. And so I think it's very good news for Illinois. They're going to have to demonstrate and continue to practice responsible government practices in hiring, and obviously people are always watching government, watchdog agencies, so it's not like government will not be watched in Illinois. But I think it's a reflection of good management by the governor at this time.
Jeff, is Illinois ready for this test independent of the courts?
It sounds, Jim, like it's long overdue. And I would imagine that the court system, obviously across the board, agrees with that. And you're exactly right. 50 years later, today, there is so much more opportunity for watchdog, so much opportunity for transparency. In Iowa, we just have never had major problems, quite frankly, with either political party in this particular area. And so I also would agree, I think this will ultimately shed any kind of residual image. And let's face it, down here in this part of Illinois, it was probably never needed to begin with. So I think it's just an Iowa guy looking at this, seems to me like it was overdue.
Well, there are a lot of watchdogs out there. You're both right. Now, you don't expect laws that address distracted driving to be very political, but you can argue it kind of has been in Iowa. Right now, state law bans texting and driving, but there's been a push the last few years to ban the use of handheld cell phones altogether while driving, so-called hands-free legislation. Illinois is among 30 states to have the tougher law. It's stalled in the Iowa legislature for the last 4 years, and traffic deaths year to date are higher than the previous 5 years. What will it take to get this done in Iowa? Why is it stalling year after year? Do you have any take on this, Jeff? You're the Iowa guy.
Sure, and I've followed this issue quite a bit. In fact, I think my son was even on one of the committees that was considering this. Let me start with your second question first, Jim. What will it take? Political pressure at home. All politics is local. This is one of those issues that I think the constituents, the individual legislators, I think people can be heard on this issue. I can tell you, Jim, the two most common reasons for resisting this or not making this pass through immediately, because there are a lot of Democrats, and quite frankly, I know some good friends in the Republican Party that are in favor of this. One is law enforcement continues to bring up some issues and some problems with enforcement, number one, and then number two, just to put it generically, the whole idea of government intrusion and where does that stop. But I really think if law enforcement it can come up with solutions for enforcement so that we can be prepared that everybody will be treated equitably on this and that it can be fairly administered. I think with some political pressure, this issue isn't going to go away.
Jeff, it's my understanding that law enforcement, if the enforcement problem is because it's texting and driving right now, they can't even enforce that because people can just say they're on the phone, in which case it's not enforceable. So why is this stalling in the legislature? Because there, as you say, there is support, and I'm hearing it's the Ways and Means Committee that's kind of not getting anywhere.
The Ways and Means Committee is dealing with this because of the fine aspect of it. In terms of the Iowa legislature, even though the Ways and Means Committee, which is oftentimes the second committee that hears legislation like this, because the actual issue, Jim, would the policy and the issue itself would be dealt with in another committee. The Ways and Means Committee would actually deal with the fines involved. So my sense is that there's more to it than just that one committee. I think the political pressure would build up if it was all based on the Ways and Means Committee in and of itself. That is my conjecture.
Porter, you agree it takes political pressure at home to make this get any traction? Because it does seem to have support among the majority of lawmakers.
You're right, and it's a majority of lawmakers from what I've read, and also there's a poll that shows 70% of Iowans. So I think it's a case where the leaders in the General Assembly in Iowa, the House and the Senate, the leadership, as Jeff mentioned, are behind the curve on this and need to catch up with where the will of the people are. And, you know, as always, these details with law enforcement and other things need to be ironed out, as Jeff said. But the public is for it. It's clearly a rising danger and a threat on roads in Iowa, Illinois, and all over the country. So whatever we can do to pass this, we're all safer. I spent a lot of time in Iowa, and I'll feel better once this is passed. And I assume that it will be in 2023.
We'll see. Jeff Koppman, Porter McNeil, stand by. We have one more topic to get to. That's about the move for some student loan relief. Those of you watching at home can catch that in a web extra online at ourquadcities.com.